Hello and welcome back to the New York Young Republican Club podcast. My name is Mario J. Nicoletto, your campaigns chairman for the New York Young Republican Club. And we have a really exciting show for you today. We have amazing guests. I want to get straight into it. We have with us Troy Olson, the Sergeant at Arms for the New York Young Republican Club, and many say the paramilitary commander of the New York Young Republican Club. Troy, welcome on.
Good to be here, Mario.
We also have Dr. Amin Nayebpour. Doctor, how are you?
Thank you. Good. It's a pleasure to be back. Fourth time, I think.
Fourth or fifth time. I'm always happy to have you on. We're going to talk some Iran. Truly an expert in his field, geopolitical risk analyst.
Thank you.
So definitely want to get some words from Naeem. And then finally, our first ever party chairman, Chairman Liam McCabe of the I almost said New York Republican Club, of the Brooklyn Republican Party. How are you?
It's good to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. This is the first time we've had a party chairman on the show. And I want to get straight into it because we have a lot of different voices and a lot of different opinions on this panel. Now, you have been the chairman for a couple, how long has it been? A couple months?
A couple of months. It was September of last year.
September of last year. Okay. And I was talking about this with Troy before the show began, and I want to pick your brain about it in particular. Essentially, from what I've seen, and many of you are welcome to disagree, Brooklyn, the borough of Brooklyn, looks to me like the epicenter of a metastasizing, I would argue, the cancer of the DSA of socialism.
Absolutely.
Much of it is the Commie Corridor, that western portion, and you have very deep blue pockets in like East New York and Canarsie and those areas. What is it like being the general of an army going against socialism in the heart of it?
Well, it is. It's definitely ground zero for the DSA takeover of the Democratic Party. And I believe that they're now poised. The DSA has a district leader, Julio Pena, who I believe is set to oust the current Brooklyn Democratic chair. I think that's imminent. So you have the DSA literally taking over the party. And it's true. You have the Commie Corridor. We had the congressional election. And what's interesting is you mentioned some of those neighborhoods. Those are deep blue, but the blue of Canarsie or of central Brooklyn is more of a working class, Democratic Party, sort of the outgoing party to a degree. It really in contrast to the Commie Corridor. So I think that's where we're going to try and aim to maybe pick up some seats.
That's incredible. Any races you're looking at in particular this year? I know our club has endorsed Michael Novikov and Lester Chang, Tom Stanton, a couple other, Eton Harris for Municipal District 8 for civil court judge. What are you looking at? How do you feel this year?
Well, you mentioned it right there. So we obviously want to hold on to the seats we have, the assembly seats and the Senate seat with Senator Steve Chan. But yeah, we're looking to take a civil court section that we've never done before. That's Eton Harris. We were sort of warned by the Democrats they're going to come after all of our candidates, try to throw them off the ballot, which, by the way, they did. And we beat them at every step of the way. We beat them. First of all, you've got a petition to get on the ballot. And you've really got to get double the amount of signatures to survive a challenge. In some cases, we got triple, quadruple the amount. So we kind of beat them there. Usually they back off, but they challenged us with these frivolous challenges at the Board of Elections. And then after the Board of Elections is exhausted, sort of your fight there, you can take it to court. Well, we beat them at court. And then sort of in a very unprecedented way, the Brooklyn Democrats appealed these decisions. And of course we won. So they are desperate. We've been beating them and we want to continue doing that. And Eton Harris certainly is one of our, the main things we want to do is finally move on to the bench now. We've got some legislative seats and now we want to kind of take ground, with the judicial seats.
Yeah. And this is what I like about the Brooklyn GOP so much is that Eton, he's a young guy. And then we obviously also collaborate a lot, the club and the Brooklyn Party, which I'm very grateful for. I know we all are. I appreciate that you guys are breathing new life into the party, more younger, fresh faces, people in their 20s and 30s that want to get involved. I guess, what would you say to the average person who is Republican leaning, but maybe not active?
Get involved. It's a lot of fun. I sort of got involved at the local level, getting involved in campaigns, and I've had a lot of fun. And I kind of want to bring that fun back to it, back to campaigns, getting active, being on the streets is a sort of, you kind of feel alive as it gets closer to November, and there's a real thrill in it. Win or lose, it's an exciting thing to be involved in. So I would say, give it a shot. Get off the keyboards, sort of step away from the digital world and come out onto the streets of Brooklyn and see what it's all about. I think people will have fun.
And Troy,
Can I do great to have you here, Liam, by the way. I'm going to do a plug/segue into an event you have coming up. The situation you face in Brooklyn today is not unlike some American history that once happened 250 years ago. General Washington, the Continental Army, was very much outnumbered, not just in terms of the British that were landing, but also the residents of the city were not all on board necessarily. So it was a very tenuous situation, the Battle of Brooklyn I speak of, which we just had the 250th of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The Continental Army was in Brooklyn. I'll quote a letter. It's going to be a long, bloody summer. And then we roll the calendar to August, which is around the corner. And it was a very, very, very close call for General Washington and the Continental Army. And you have a pretty cool event coming up that on August 27th.
August 27th. That is the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Brooklyn. So, we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But, a lot of the war has sort of begun. Some of this conflict has already begun, but we do celebrate that point in history. But it's nice to recognize these battles are happening after. The Battle of Brooklyn is August 27th, 1776. We're having our 4th of July, Independence Day celebration on August 27th at the Michael Rawley American Legion Post. And I'll give a shout out to one of our other candidates, Tom Stanton. He's a Navy veteran, former NYPD K9 unit, and he's our candidate for Senate against Gonardus. And so he's a member at that post. He helped secure the location, and luckily some things cleared up and we were able to get that date. So also that American Legion post is thought to be the actual burial ground of the Maryland 400. Maryland 400 are the soldiers, really. There's a book about it where they call them, Washington's immortals. And these are really sort of the beginning of any kind of elite regiment that holds the line for Washington and the remainder of his troops to kind of fall back to Brooklyn Heights. And if you know the story, and this kind of happens throughout the American Revolution, sort of the hand of God, and there's a lot of retreat. There's a lot of different tactics that Washington has to use. But in this case, he falls back to Brooklyn Heights and sort of under the cover of fog, that's heavy, heavy fog that falls down. I think it's August 28th or 29th at this point. He's able to get everyone, sort of like Brooklyn's Dunkirk, everybody back over to Manhattan Island. I think they move up towards Harlem and they live to fight another day. And many would say that the British had them pinned, and had they gone through, and that would have been the end of the revolution. So Brooklyn is a pivotal thing. And yes, we are having our barbecue. You can find it on our social media. Please come. And we have a special price for active duty and veterans, $17.76.
Nice.
I love it. Definitely come by to the barbecue. I know I'm going to be there with Tom. So you got at least +2 there. And I wanted to ask you, because you're in a bit of a different position than Nassau or Suffolk or even Westchester, where you have your pockets of red that are very strong. We have multiple elected officials that are Republicans representing in Brooklyn. I know we have a city council member there. We have a Republican presence, but overall, from what I understand, and Troy, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, I believe it is the bluest borough, or one of the, maybe next to Manhattan.
No, Manhattan would be the bluest borough. Brooklyn's second, though. Although maybe the Bronx actually is second. But the Bronx had a huge surge.
Yeah. I'd say the Bronx is second. I think, though, that we have more population, so it depends. We were looking at the numbers earlier, and I think the Bronx percentage-wise, had a higher Democratic vote, but I think we have more raw numbers. So damage-wise, Brooklyn is tough for us in terms of
So, and he mentioned before, we kind of do have a Washingtonian figure in the room, someone who's able to lead a small group of people, not so small group of people, to battle, a political battle that is. And, you know, what's it like being on the inside? Because I'm new to New York City. You know, for those of you watching, I've been living in Long Island for most of my life, and I moved to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, same as you, about 6-7 months ago. And now I'm observing that everything's different. I was in Smithtown. That's, you know, you could run somebody named John Doe. It's a fake person, doesn't exist. They'd win in Smithtown as a Republican, right? Now I'm completely set aback when I'm in areas like Williamsburg, for example, where it's just lib city, right? So from the inside, what is it like being the Republican chairman in Brooklyn, of all places?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a great honor. I've been involved, you know, on the ground in campaigns for a very long time. I've only been the chairman for a few months, but
and that's going spectacular.
No, thank you very much. You know, so I just kind of enjoy the fight, right? I enjoy the battle. It doesn't matter whether I was chairman or not. I'd be on the ground doing this stuff. That's kind of what I love. I love the fight of politics. And I have been around long enough to remember when, at one point, kind of our darkest moment was probably 2018, where we lost Senator Marty Golden and we lost Congressman Dan Donovan. And the only person we had left was Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis. And that was just a sliver. Marty Golden was a senator like Senator Chan that was his Senate seat was entirely within Brooklyn. And I remember earlier than that, we always had a Republican congressman. We had Vito Pasella, we had Michael Grimm. There's brief periods where you have McMahon or you had Max Rose, but generally speaking, the Republicans have held that congressional seat, and that kind of comes into Brooklyn. And same thing with that assembly seat, where Chairman Tannousis now represents. But in 2018, that was a dark time. But if I go back further than that, I mean, we were battling, you know, these campaigns in Brooklyn for a very long time. And like I give an example, another shout out is we have a great candidate, Ruslan Shamal. And he's running in the district that goes from Staten Island to Brooklyn and Brighton Beach, and is one of the people active on his campaign, David Starobin. David Starobin that was a wild campaign. That was 2012. Senator Kruger was indicted in Brooklyn in that seat. It was a redistricting year, but that old seat still existed, and it really went from Brighton Beach, Manhattan Beach, you know, through Sheepshead Bay, almost kind of touching Borough Park a little bit. And that was a special election between Senator Starobin and City Councilman Lou Fidler, who was, you know, the park named after Lou Fidler that we were at, you know, Councilwoman Ina Vernikov's protest. He was a tremendous figure in Brooklyn politics, and David Starobin was, you know, my buddy, you know, just a dude from Brooklyn like me, you know, sort of a tremendous underdog. And we won that election by 13 votes in 2012 in a special election. And so I'd say, and that was right after Congressman Bob Turner had also won in the special election by Anthony Weiner vacating. And that was also an election where Brooklyn was the deciding factor. So I can go back, you know, 15 years or so where we were beginning these battles. So, you know, we look at a map of Brooklyn, South Brooklyn, where it's just taken for granted how red it is. But those were battles where people thought we were crazy, that we would never take Sheepshead Bay. We would never take, you know, Manhattan Beach. I mean, these are the reddest areas. And, you know, Councilwoman Vernikov is probably the one of the reddest districts now. But that wasn't always the case for a long time. So I go back a long time to where we were really outnumbered, you know?
Shameless plug plus granular nerd question that you both can weigh in on. So 15 years is about the timeline that lines up with some of the parts of the book Gavin and I wrote, The Emerging Populist Majority. We talked about how New York, both in upstate and in other areas, peaked as this Democrat voting area. And it peaked probably in the 2012 to 2018 time period in total, where Obama had a weaker reelection, but he did better in New York. And in the last, let's say, decade, almost a decade, it's been trending back Republican. All of the historical upstate areas have returned to red. Some of the other areas, Long Island, has returned And so you're seeing, I think, a trending red dynamic. And the question is, A, can it keep going? And B, what's the next step of it to flip the city, flip the state? So that leads into the nerdy math question. Do you believe it's, and feel free to just say all of the above, we got to do everything. And that's probably what might be your answer. But you have that base in South Brooklyn now. And you could, in theory, run up the score there. You could register. And I think we should be doing that for sure anyway, everywhere. But there's do you go up north and try to find the places of hidden potential and pound pavement there? And is that an expedient path, or is it just let's turn out South Brooklyn and grow it at the edges? Because I always find like, oh, my neighbor's this way, and then people move in here. I feel like it grows block by block sometimes. Or is there a pocket up there? You referenced a pocket earlier that maybe the answer is going to be both. But yeah, weigh in.
Sure. I mean, so you're saying, are you asking about just northern in the state?
Yeah, like you could turn out South Brooklyn and try to play a turnout battle. Yeah. And if that got you to 40%, say in Brooklyn, that's a pretty good mark citywide, statewide. You're hitting your margin.
Yeah,
and could you do that with just South Brooklyn, or do you feel that you need to do that and also find these pockets up north and in the eastern part of the borough? To trend back, if you will.
Just my 2 cents, but I would say, what you should be doing is trying to pull out our base voters, the Trump voters. This is an off year. This gubernatorial election is an opportunity for us to reach into the base. It's lower turnout, generally speaking. It's not a presidential year. So I think a key part of it is what you're saying is not only in some of these sort of Trump EDs or ADs in Brooklyn and New York City, but upstate as well, across the board. And then it's to also pull in the people that are sort of the Democrats. I think that's the other part of the puzzle is, yes, that's part of it. Pull out the base strong. And look, the Democrats are sort of being taken over by the DSA. And, we were looking at the numbers earlier, Cuomo, got these tremendous amount of votes and really, was able to sort of pull a lot of Democrats with him. And I think that, and steal all those votes, to be honest with you, from Curtis Lewa, in my opinion. And I think that was a big part of it. But it goes to show you that Democrats are willing to cross over in the last election with Mamdani. And now what he's done in these congressional races, I think it's going to be a real opportunity. Now what you see with the DSA taking over the Brooklyn Democratic Party and the co-chair, Gustavo, I'm not sure, remember his last name, of New York City DSA.
The Fox News interview.
Fox News, he's there saying that, that you should only be, you should be confined, landlords should be confined to 12% profit. That's it. And it's outrageous,
Wow.
and it's such I think here's what I would say to you. So there's going to be people that are naturally appalled to that. But I think our message, the Republican Party here in New York City, in Brooklyn, throughout the state, has got to present this, not just say that that's crazy, but, that is not a vision of opportunity. That is not a vision of hope for anybody. You should tell people you can make as much money as you want. Go out there and make as much profit as you want. Don't restrain anybody from that. And, sort of let's help lift everyone up in that way. And that's got to be our message. That's the empowerment message that I think we're going to have in Brooklyn. That's what we're talking about, is lifting people up with capitalism.
I think Gustavo would be surprised to learn how few landlords are getting that 12% profit. Right now, a lot of landlords are mom and pop in this city that are on very tight margins, and the more the city puts restrictions on them, the harder it is for them to even keep up with that maintenance cost.
Earlier,
and then they take the unit off the market.
Yeah, earlier you mentioned Mayor Mamdani, and Amin, I actually want to come to you because you said before we began taping that he was a special kind of socialist or a special kind of communist. Can you go into that a bit more?
Sure, thanks. So, first of all, let's call him what he is. He's a communist. He says several times, taking the means of production. That comes from Marx. That comes from his Das Kapital. So he's a communist. He's not a socialist. So, I mean, I wish he was a socialist. I mean, it's much better than a communist.
I wish he was a capitalist.
yeah, that's like. But look, but he's a special kind of communist because people think, okay, communism is about that historical materialism, so it cannot merge with any religion. Well, that's wrong.
Mhm.
But so Mamdani is a Islamic communist, I would call it. But why has this combination been so attractive? Because after communism failed, so there was this aura in the world that, okay, this doesn't work. They killed so many people. But now it was all about the proletariat, the weak, the vulnerable. But what they did after the fall of communism, it was that they expanded this weak, this vulnerable thing, and which aligns with Islam. Because Islam is all about, the weak is always right. The vulnerable is always right, which is, sometimes the case, sometimes not the case. So they try to put this alliance together, Islam and communism, and then create this new set of proletariat, which was the immigrants, even if they're illegal, anyone that is, it is in that, which that doesn't fall in Marx, because Marx clearly says some of the proletariat, they're self-alienate, they cannot be part of the world, revolution towards communism. So he actually excludes them. Marx is less exclusive than these guys. It's very funny. So these guys, they expanded, and this is why they like inclusivity. They always say, let's be inclusive, let's include everyone. I mean, they wouldn't include Marx in their group, by the way. So this is why it makes it so attractive. Like, it's about putting everyone, even if they don't have merit, which, I want to say capitalism is not about, screwing over people. It's not about, the marginalized should not be, they should. Of course, everybody is, we're not, sociopaths. But we think capitalism is the best way for them to be much more prosperous. So it's, they've managed to successfully say, no, capitalism is just about, sucking the blood of people, blah, blah, blah. And I think they've succeeded in that message.
Absolutely. And I know, Troy, you have your opinions on how the DSA is essentially going to cause a civil war in the party, implode the party. We're going to win long term.
Yeah.
I mean, can you speak to that?
You want me to speak to
that?
it?
Yeah, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the things we've been saying are valid, and they are a huge threat, especially to New York City's health and well-being. But I think nationally, you reference communism, I totally agree. They should just be called communists, which is -70 underwater in approval, if by a recent poll of the American people. I forget the poll offhand, but I think that calling them that is not only intellectually fair and clear, but it's also politically the right strategy at this point. But what I would say is, I think we're very much in the bubble of New York City and coastal political concerns. I think if you go even 40 miles inward from the coast, you'll still see a country that despises these ideas. And I think so there's a swath of New Yorkers in Canarsie or wherever, the working class, the diverse working class, that's getting pushed out of this party. And that's maybe an opportunity for the Brooklyn GOP, for all the GOPs here locally. But I see something going, as someone who grew up in middle America, what I also see is the potential for the states and the districts that they actually need to win the House, hold the Senate, or ever put 270 electoral votes together. I think they're going to be totally alienating a lot of people that are maybe historically attached to the Democratic Party, but they see that as Blue Dog Democrat, Kennedy Democrat, something that's patriotic, that's religious, that something that they recognize, but it's not their fathers or their grandfathers or grandmothers' party anymore. And I think Zohran Mamdani and AOC and company make that so abundantly obvious and clear that the Republican message going into the midterms, there are challenges that America faces, but our opponents are being led by communists. And we are the alternative. So let's build out a grand coalition and smash communism again in this country, like we did the first time, as fast as possible. And we'll work out our other differences later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that really scares me is again, going back to that quote, Gustavo's quote about, and I think he said, you don't have a constitutional right to 12% profit. No one, but it's just a bizarre, it's sort of where his head is at. You also don't have a constitutional restriction to whatever profit you might want to take. It's just bizarre that he would frame it that way. And here's what I think. I think there's the DSA has this obsession against landlords, but landlords is code word for property ownership. And I think that the middle class, the working class in Brooklyn, throughout the state and the country, I think home ownership, property ownership is a great step sort of out of poverty or, into the upper middle class, is to sort of own your own property. It's another thing the DSA said, which is they basically want to say that you're a working person. They said that the old blue collar, was if you worked labor, you worked in manual labor, and work is sort of changing and saying, if you have a job, if you work, whether you're a surgeon, making $500,000 a year, or whether you drive a bus, you are in the same class. And what they want to do is they want to go after property ownership, period. They sort of want to make those the bad guy. In Brooklyn, I can tell you, you spoke about it, Troy. There are a lot of middle class people that the only means of income they have in retirement is their property, is their Brooklyn brownstone that they rent out. Maybe they make $50,000, $60,000 a year. They are absolutely middle class, so they're just struggling to get by, and that's their means. The DSA wants to paint all of these people as bad people. These are mom and pop property owners, and the ironic part is, what's going to happen is if they make it too burdensome for these mom and pop property owners to exist, the landlords to exist, the only people that are going to be able to come in are the big, corporate giants that can come in and sweep up and buy all this property. And then it'll be, Mamdani is hoping to be, the government landlord. And so half the property will be government owned and the other half will be sort of these corporate giant landlords, mega property owners. And I don't think either way is the American way. And I think we've got to, lift people up. I would love to see a Brooklyn and a New York City where we have increased ownership. Nothing wrong with being a tenant, but I'd love to see people own co-ops, own a home, be able to rent out a floor of their home and move themselves up into the upper middle class and be independent.
That's a great wraparound to, so basically the original question, what's it like being chair? You are the chairman of, the largest borough population-wise of the entire city, right? And it looks to me that it's not necessarily Democrats versus Republicans anymore. It's common sense versus, quite frankly, communism.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you're in a spot where there is a very diverse borough and differing people with differing religions and cultures and ethnicities and races, and that's all fine and good. How do you see yourself on the front lines where the GOP is taking on a monster like the Democratic Socialists? Where do you kind of see that going in the next couple of years?
Well, part of it is, there's an old saying in politics, right? When your opponent is falling down, get out of the way. Let them crash. So, step one is, get out of the way and let them crash. I think that's part of it. Is sort of let everyone around them and let the Democratic Party itself, kind of see how bad it's going and open our doors to all of the people that really used to be Democrats. The Democratic Party left them a long time ago. Yeah. And, now, especially with this takeover, the DSA takeover of the Kings County Democratic Party, the election of Zorhan, all of these congressional seats. And these were old, the old ethnic groups that used to make up Brooklyn, the Irish, the Italian, the Jews, the Puerto Ricans, Dominicans. In some of these congressional races with Nydia Velázquez, Espaillat, these are communities that didn't come out strong in the primary, but those were icons of their community. And they were leftists, don't get me wrong, but, Zorhan is sort of like used these white progressive hipster, transplants.
Yeah.
And that's what made up, these studies came out and show that that's really who's making up this in these primary wins. And unfortunately, the Republican Party isn't there yet to go out there and really try and register as many voters. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to see people begin to register in the Republican Party. And that's our goal, is to get that message out there and say, there's really no hope for you. You don't have the congressperson you had is gone. They're not on the ballot anymore. And your best hope is November on our line.
Could I add in the other message, which is more granular and strategic, but I think it's so important to understand the system we're actually in and intercept this sort of, let's be honest, 25 catastrophe where we had a third candidate who's running independent We can't have that again. I think we need to have momentum, build momentum, and we have to impress upon people that nationally, the party of the future is probably going to be the Republican Party. Does New York City really want to be as the greatest city in American life on the outs of that? Or do you want to have a seat at the table? Absolutely. And then the final pragmatic argument is this is rightly or wrongly a closed primary system. So you have two default major parties in the system, no matter what you think of them, the Democrats and the Republican Party. The Democrats have become captured by the communist elements. Join us here in the Republican Party. And if you have differences, that's why we have primaries. And if the alternative is a communist Democrat, we shouldn't be doing this independent, splitting the anti-communist, anti-Zoran vote. We need to get into that binary choice. And if you think more than that, well, that's what a primary is for. We need to get that across to people that thought, let's give Andrew Cuomo a second chance after he lost the first time. And I don't mean to fault anyone for it's their vote at the end of the time, but from a strategic standpoint, we're going to have the same result over and over again. If we keep splitting like that.
And that's all the more reason that the New York Young Republican Club is going to be working closely with the Brooklyn GOP at these street fairs and at these festivals and at these jubilees, getting people registered as Republicans, whether you're black, white, man, woman, Russian, Greek, Italian. It doesn't make a difference to us. We want more Republicans.
And there's a big one coming up.
The Brighton Jubilee on the 23rd. We're going to be there. We're going to be at a couple in Bay Ridge. We're going to be doing some events together in collaboration, making sure we get as many Republican voters as possible. I got one more question for you. And I want to get into Iran, but I actually never asked you this. And I want to pick your brain about it. Essentially, what's your favorite memory in politics?
Wow. I would say I had so many. That's a tough one. I'll say the three favorite elections were Eric Ulrich. I was his campaign manager. He was 23 when he got elected. He was my friend. Michael Grimm, elected in 2010, was again a friend, and so was David Starobin. So those three elections were very exciting. We took on establishment, establishment forces. We took seats that they didn't think we could win. So I'd say the three, but I'd say, the one that was the most intriguing was the Starobin race in 2012, the one I was telling you about before.
Right.
No one gave this guy a shot. No one gave any of us a shot. Brooklyn was a different landscape back then. We were taking on this juggernaut city councilman, the Thomas Jefferson Club, and we won by 13 votes. And we learned so much. We learned by fighting in the trenches, going door to door. And one thing we learned even back then that the Democrats have gotten very good at is absentee ballots. So if I can give you one quick story, is the absentee ballot story. That's how we won the election. And the Democrats usually do that. Usually it's the case where we're up on election night and then the absentee ballots come in, or the paper ballots. And there was this woman, we had an office on Coney Island Avenue. It's in Ena's district. And this woman walked off the street. Her name was Alla Pametko. She's Ukrainian. And she said, listen, I want to get involved. What can you say? You speak Ukrainian, you speak Russian. She was, she wanted to help. I said, listen, we need help communicating with people in these buildings, speaking Russian, letting them know that they can indeed vote absentee. And we told her the whole process. And we actually went door to door, made sure that we got their application, and then physically brought the application downtown Brooklyn. And you can sign off your absentee ballot so it doesn't get lost in the mail. So this actually wasn't mail-in. This was hand-delivered to the Board of Elections, the application, and then we would pick up the ballot, bring it back to the voter, get them to fill it out, and then again physically bring it back. And we did this back and forth. And we had a whole group of people. And I remember on election night, it was really close. And let's say the margin of victory, and we were actually up. We were up by less than 100. And all the guys from the Republican State Senate, they'd come down. We had buses of people, pulling out the vote, and they said, "Please tell me you had an absentee ballot plan." I said, I did. And her name was Alapa Metco. We're going to win this thing. Like, I already knew the numbers because we were, you can keep track of the absentee ballots. Another thing we need to do. And I implore all people across New York City, New York State, and the country to do this. Pay attention to the absentee ballot numbers that are coming in. You can ask the Board of Elections. You can say how many ballots have come in. If it's 100, if it's 1,000, match that internally in your campaign from what you've sent in. So if your numbers are, you've got 500 that you feel confident about that they voted for you, and there's 1,000 back, you're okay. But if you've only, if only 200 of your people on your ID list have voted absentee, and the Board of Elections, wherever the Board of Elections says there's 1,000 that have been returned, you're in deep trouble. So reach out to the absentee ballot. It makes the difference. It's been making the difference for the Democrats, and it made the difference. And I'll say this: Starobin winning, and Lou Fiddler said this. Rest in peace to Lou Fiddler. But he said if Starobin is to win, it'll open the floodgates for all the Republicans. And fortunately for us, he was right. And now it's Assemblyman Novikov, Councilwoman Vernikoff, and everyone else in that area. Senator Chan, and we even had Alec Procrasny. Many have switched over. So that was probably one of the most exciting races.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Well, it's very clear there's a battle in Brooklyn that's brewing, and I want to get to you, Dr. Nayebpour, because there's also a battle in Iran, and the MOU I believe has been violated. And what's going on? Because I am confused. I mean, I am so confused. Can you fill us in on what's happening in the Middle East?
Sure. Just before that, just as a cautionary tale, economists said once, bad ideas, they don't die, they just hibernate. Same with communism. So
I like that.
People should be careful. Like, they don't die. Don't be naive about, USSR fell, we're out. No, it's just hibernating. It's not going to die. Just
it's true.
But in the Middle East, so let's do a recap. February 28th, Trump said, starting this operation, Epic Fury, for 4 reasons. 1, the nuclear material. 2, the proxy network. 3, the Navy. And 4, the Islamic Republic's industrial complex for building ballistic missiles. I can really claim that he, except for the nuclear material, he has achieved his 3 other aims. The proxies, what happened? So in Iraq, he just met the Iraqi prime minister. I think it had something to do with the proxies in Iraq. The ones in Lebanon has already got neutralized. We can see the Houthi ones. Saudis are attacking it. So I think this is a coordinated thing by Trump and Rubio. He went to the Middle East recently to neutralize these guys. They're not hitting as much missiles as before, as they were doing in the 40 days war. And 3, their Navy is basically absent. They just have these small, bad, small vessels. So I think he's achieved those 3. He just needs a nuclear thing. We can talk about that later. But since then, they signed the MOU. I think the language of the MOU was very vague on purpose. One of them was when they said Iran should do some appropriating stuff for the Strait. They interpreted it as it should be our way. The Americans interpreted it as no, you should just open it. So I think it was vague on purpose because Trump was testing these guys if they actually abide by the terms, even if the terms are vague. And he actually took some concrete steps. He lifted the sanctions for 30 days, and he actually showed goodwill. It's not that he was actually being doing conniving and stuff. So, and it was a combination of a carrot and stick policy. Last time I said, war is a continuation of politics with other means. So he started the war, pressured them to come to the negotiating table. It worked. Signed the MOU. That was a carrot. He gave them the sanctions off for 30 days. They did not like it, and I think even when Vance started to talk with them, he said we had a gentlemanly agreement, and I'm sure he knows these guys are not gentlemen. I think he was actually giving them a chance to be a gentleman. Yeah. So they violated that. and now it's time for them to be under pressure again. So it's basically it has happened like after the MOU, a tit for tat type of thing has happened. So it's not a full scale wall, of course, but it's a tit for tat. So the Iranians do some stuff there, and the Americans do some not completely proportionate, but proportionate, but not in a larger scale. So in smaller scale. So if you hit some vessels, we're going to hit, much more of your arms. But this is kind of a escalation that's going to go up step by step. It's not going to go up just to 100 right now.
Yeah.
It's a very deliberate tactic by Trump, I think.
Yeah, and I saw that recently we had 2 service members pass away. I think that I'm not recalling what country it was in. Which one was it?
Killed in action.
What? Killed in
Yeah,
action?
I say killed in action. When passed away sounds like not to.
Well, yeah, they weren't killed in action. Yeah.
I mean, from
And this is
soldier's
in a
perspective.
country outside of Iran.
Jordan.
I believe it was Jordan.
Yeah.
It was Jordan. So my bottom line, and you all know my foreign policy, right? I'm the reverse of whatever a hawk would be. I'm America first.
A dove.
I'm a dove. All right. I don't want to
But there's
leave.
America first, and then there's being a dove. Like the leftist peaceniks are called doves. Do you subscribe to that, or are you more? I want a foreign policy in which our policy goals are met clearly and convincingly in America's best interests.
I'm okay with any foreign war that advances our interests.
Okay.
I'm not interested in any idea or any notion that the United States rolling with tanks and guns and bombs into Iran or any other Middle Eastern country for that matter is any of our business, any of our concern, or, I mean, it makes no sense as to why we would go to another war after we just ended Iraq after like 20 years.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, well, and Iraq.
Iraq was two different eras. I'm on my GWAT era now. You had the 03-11 Iraq War, and then not too long after the 03-11 Iraq War, which I would call a military victory, but but political victory. But by the 20-year story, once it winds down, you basically end up with the status quo or the prior status quo. Very depressing. But what I want to get into a few other areas of why I think the MOU came into existence. One was the global economy. 2 was to reset the war powers resolution clock, which has now happened. And within that time frame, they're now working with Iraq, which makes me think we've won the Iraq war after all. We're now working with Iraq to open up an alternative path in the Strait of Hormuz. So I'm kind of bullish. Is that the right way? Bullish? I was getting bullish, bearish, confused.
Bears hibernate.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I'm kind of I'm kind of bullish. They don't let me. I can't trade stocks anymore, so I forget the terminology. Not because of anything I did, because of my wife's employment. I'm bullish on no matter how the specifics go, the tit for tat goes. I'm pretty bullish on it because we have not just reset the clock on the global economy and our national economy is looking like it's gaining steam, but we reset the war powers resolution. So buy-in's not necessarily needed, and it's also not really blowing up. And I don't know if Iran has the capacity to do much of anything anyway, because they really did get decimated in that 48-day war. So
the strategy was really smart in the 40 days war. So first, going to that, why the MOU happened. Another thing was, I think, the stockpile. So they were diminishing, so they had to increase the industrial production of it. But also from Saudi Arabia all the way to the westward. They're going here. Actually, Israel. They're actually the security of that area. So Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq pipelines are going towards Israel, and then from there they're going towards China. And there was another thing that happened too, was that China imported 5% less of oil than it would usually do. So global oil markets showed incredible resilience.
Yeah.
And I think that 5% was because of Trump. I don't think it was by accident. I mean, China likes to stockpile as much as it wants, but I think had to do with the agreement with Xi Jinping and Trump. I don't know what, but it was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But going back to going back to that, so yes, I think the Iraq War, it's lingered on the American mind for a long time, and I think that the error of that was that, you know, Bush went there, instead of making his money worth, he just said, let's make them democracy here. That was a
Yeah.
mistake. He should have said, okay, I'm taking your oil, I'm letting American companies, you know, have exclusive right to your oil, and then I'm heading out. That was his mistake. So I don't think going there, yeah, maybe it was other reasons too, but he should have stayed. He should have taken it and then got out.
He fought a what was a real politique war,
Yeah.
but fought it with Wilsonian rhetoric. Yeah. And there's no president I dislike more than Woodrow Wilson. I think within the public's imagination, the Iraq War is sitting similarly to what used to be called Vietnam syndrome. And I actually think what has transpired in Iran, what kind of shook the country out of Vietnam syndrome was the Persian Gulf War and a 100-hour land war. I'm one who thinks Operation Epic Fury is the cleanest, most destructive victory we've had towards our interests since the Persian Gulf War, actually, or the early Iraq War, where we clearly were able to topple the regime very quickly and have smashing military success. But the problem is the goalpost for success was you had to have stability, and some errors were made with the aftermath pretty quickly on a political level, and asking a military to solve ostensibly political stability issues, I think, is asking way too much. And then Afghanistan, I think, you know, the public's imagination, okay, yeah, we can smash them, we can change the regime, we can kill terrorists, we can kill bad guys. Where's Osama bin Laden? That's all people really wanted to know, and it took 9 years to eventually bring him to justice. So I think those two conflicts, the GWAT era that I was close to, ultimately have given us a bit of a new Vietnam syndrome. And I'm hoping Epic Fury, the optimistic part of me, wants that to be the neo-Persian Gulf War that snaps us out of that syndrome, which I hope doesn't lead to an overcorrection where we think we can just accomplish anything with a military again. Because some of this stuff does, it is carrot and stick, it's diplomacy, it's strategic, long game thinking. You can't do everything in the foreign policy toolkit with a military. If you could, we'd have a totally different world.
The reason I bring up Iraq and Afghanistan, though, is because when we invaded Afghanistan in 2001,
2001, the end,
at the very end of the year, and then we invaded Iraq in 2003. Just for reference, in 2003, I was 2 years old, so I had to grow up, and I'm 25 now. So up until 2021, when we left Afghanistan, I was 20 years old when we left Afghanistan. So for 2 decades, I was hearing about, you know, oh, your second cousin is deployed or whatever, or buddies from high school. I have a couple friends from high school. I won't name names, but they were in Kabul at the airport, United States Marines, 2 or 3 of them. And it's like my entire generation has been subject to losing family members, or God forbid themselves, their lives or their families' lives, because of an overcorrection after 1991. So the question I'd ask you is, how can we avoid another disastrous defeat in the Middle East? I would argue they were Afghanistan was a defeat.
And I want to be clear, like anyone who has that, I've served with and know well 9 people that lost their lives in these conflicts. So I get where you're coming from, believe me, and know it on a more direct level even.
For sure.
And all I can say is, you know, God bless all of them in their memory, and God be with their families. And it is something that I think about every day of my life. It doesn't leave me. However, I can't let that, and this has been hopefully the maturity in life that I've been trying to reach for, is you can't let that cloud your judgment towards everything ever. And I think it's both and neither, in the sense that, you know, you can't let, you know, past memories, i.e. a syndrome, cloud your judgment towards all future conflict. And if you have a smashing success, you can't assume that, oh, this will be easy. We can move the world with a military, with an army, because you can't necessarily do that. So I think there are lessons in both the success and failures of our past 50 years or so of U.S. foreign policy and national security.
And also burden sharing. Like every time people say, I'm sorry, boots on the ground, the assumption is American boots on the ground. No, like let's talk about Israeli boots on the ground. And I think they're actually willing to put their boots on the ground in Iran because they have done it before. So I'm pretty sure, but I mean, they really need the green light from Trump. I mean, they're not going to do this by themselves. They need the green from Trump, the green light by Trump, and also the Hormuz Strait. So, you know, America said, okay, I'm cleaning it up, but from now on, it's your problem. Europe, the Arab states and the Persian Gulf, and the Asian countries. You guys can, you know, bring some consortium or whatever, and just keep that area safe. I'm not going to be here, but I'm just going to look, you know, if there's a problem, if you guys need, you know, some guidance, some intelligence, I'm going to do it. But I'm not going to put my boots on the ground, and I'm not going to pay money anymore.
Doctor, if I may, one question.
Amin called me.
Amin, I like to be official. Medical doctor. No. Amin, you say boots on the ground and burden sharing. Total get what you're saying there. Are boots on the ground needed to accomplish that fourth goal?
Yes.
They absolutely are. I would agree with you there. Is there potential that boots on the ground in trying to go for that fourth goal could induce, or let's say it doesn't go to plan, because as often happens in military operations, things do go wrong, unexpected things come up. Is there the potential for American boots on the ground with that green light go ahead? Is there a potential for that to happen once that first green light's given?
You mean if the Israelis
go
there?
Yeah, let's just say, yeah, because let's just say there is, it's not going exactly to plan, and assistance is needed. And I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just stating it as A could maybe cause B, could cause C. Like what this is like, you know, Vietnam. It's not like Vietnam happened like overnight. It was this and then this and then this and then this and then mission creep. You know, that Vietnam was very much like that. And I would argue Iraq and Afghanistan.
A large buildup.
I would argue Iraq and Afghanistan, once they were won on the ground and the regimes changed, I would argue they had a bit of mission creep. I don't remember having, well, we're going to put democracy seeds in the Middle East. I didn't remember that being part of the what we were signing up for, where we're going to be like quasi mayors of villages in Iraq. Which is what ended up happening in a lot of ways. Like that was not part of the agreement. It was weapons of mass destruction. Find that, bring that up, bring that out. Regime change. Saddam must leave power. So we knew we were changing the regime, but whether it was going to be some free liberal democracy, I don't remember. Maybe wouldn't that be great? But you know what?
So what's the likelihood of if Israel does deploy ground troops, IDF, whatever the case may be, that American forces follow suit?
So let's like play this scenario.
Sure.
Israeli forces go there. It gets a shit show, and they all die. They don't get the nuclear stuff. What's the worst that's gonna happen? And Americans boots on the ground doesn't happen. What is the Islamic Republic going to think? It's not going to attack America, that's for sure. They're too scared of doing that. But they're actually going to be scared that one party of this war has shown the will that is going to put boots on the ground. Maybe next time it's going to put a much harder boots on the ground. So that's going to, I think, force them to come to the table and make much bigger concessions. Because now they are putting all their best that boots on the ground is not going to happen. That's why they are, being a bit more courageous with
a little
their
more
stuff.
abrasive, yeah.
But once they say, "Oh, these guys are going to put boots on the ground," and it's not the American one, it's the Israeli one, even though we're succeeded to defeating them, but let's not go that far.
Would there also be a Kurdish role? Perhaps
I really doubt. I mean, the Kurds. So you have to put a distinction between the Kurds in Iraq and Iran. They don't, first of all, really talk the same language, even though we put them under the name of Kurd. The Kurds in Iran are predominantly Shiite, and the ones in Iraq Sunni, so they
Okay.
don't really religiously like each other. So no, I don't think so,
That
because
wouldn't work,
because we have the experience in the Iraq War. So
Yeah.
the Kurds came, and the Iranian Kurds actually defeated them. They didn't want them to come. So I would actually put more stress on the Iranians in Iran who want to cooperate with Israel, and they exist. They're
What would that look like? What
Mhm.
I keep hearing about the Iranians that are waiting for that opportunity to grab their country back, but so often I'm hearing it from an American Iranian who, as far as I know, isn't going to be returning to fight for their old country. They're very much an American who I'm talking to, and they're part of the diaspora. And so I'm, a little suspicious on, God bless them, like, who wouldn't want their country back restored to. I don't know if anyone's seen videos of Iran before the revolution.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful potential, this country, beautiful country, like beautiful potential. Who wouldn't want that? But I don't want to like have them cloud the thinking. I would rather, who are the folks on the ground? What do they have a plan of action? Would they wait for the moment? How would that play out? And do we know the intel for sure on that?
Yeah. So when we say Iranians on the ground, I don't mean the normal people, because I mean they might come in the street and they're going to get slaughtered. So I don't think they're going to come again. But I can give you two examples. One was when Israel took a lot of those nuclear documents from Turguzabad back there. They did it with cooperation with Iranians, and when they came back, they actually showed them. There's a documentary you guys should watch, search it on YouTube. There's talking with Iranians who the Israelis trained to be very good commandos, and try to take these documents out. That's number one. And number two, it was the killing of this other nuclear scientist called Fakhrizadeh. So the Israelis had to put the I don't know, it was a machine gun or something, and then they controlled it via satellite. But somebody had to put it in the highway that he was going, and the Iranians did it.
Yeah.
So, and they did it under covert operations. In a way that when people went there, they wouldn't notice that this is unusual thing there. So we have another example too. It's when in last year, the 12-day war, when Israel was at it alone.
Right.
So they had made a drone factory near Tehran under the guise of this is a local drone factory, Iranian local drone factory, and they were making drones that when this 12-day happened, they came inside the Tehran and started killing all these head of the Islamic Republic regime, and they made that with help of local Iranians. So they had to get the registrations for that thing. Building a drone factory is not obvious. You have to go through security measures, getting the registrations up. So some people were cooperating with the Israelis to make this small factory. And how do we know this? They themselves are saying that. They're saying we got duped by this factory.
Yeah.
And so they successfully done three very good examples cooperating Iranians and trained Iranians, not normal people. So I'm sure Israelis have this.
You wouldn't want it to be normal people.
Yeah.
We have the reports of 20,000 civilians murdered, and we don't want something like that internationally or diplomatically. We'd prefer it to be different.
So it's very clear that there is probably no end in sight as of right now. And I'll ask you this, and then I want to read some comments. I'm seeing Thomas Kellogg. I'm seeing Frank Filicomo. I got some interesting names on here. Some high praise for Chairman McCabe, actually, in the comments. We love it. But I want to ask you, so memorandum of understanding, it's broken, it's dead, it's gone, right? It's not coming back, to my understanding, anytime soon. What can the United States do? And what can, I guess, us in conjunction with Israel, what can we do in order to cease the battle again? I know we had I don't want to call it a deal. I know it's an MOU, but what deal can we make in order to stop the bloodshed of innocents, of soldiers, of everywhere?
So, I mean, this might sound a bit cold, but it's going to be disproportionate attacking. That means taking away some power grids, some refineries. That is, and this is a pattern you also saw in the Serbia Kosovo war.
Yes.
So Clinton started with first he started with bridges, not not so much. Milosevic didn't cave in. He went after bigger targets, and eventually, like I think it was 72 days of bombardment, if I'm not mistaken. At the end, he even targeted museums. Like he was really frustrated. He even hit museums in Kosovo. So I think the next step would be something similar to take, maybe more strategic bridges, infrastructure that has dual use. Maybe some power grids that can affect electricity. I know I'm trying to put realistically, like if you want to achieve this goal, this is what you have to do. Yeah, you have a lot of human costs, and it's unfortunate, but this I think
sounds
this is
cold,
necessary.
but it's what it is. Troy,
it's what war is, and you said disproportionate. It would be very one-sided. I'm literally shout out to the operations room. I think it is the channel on YouTube. I've been watching a very good animated. I think it's hand-drawn animated readout day by day of the Iraq War. Of like the first like 30 days, and it's so impressively done. This site, and I've seen so many similar animated displays of fictional worlds, fictional battles. So it's great to actually see this starting to be done for real life history.
The other day, Troy walked in the studio and he sees me with my AirPods on. This is a quick sidebar. He walks in, he sees me with my AirPods on. He thinks I'm on a call. I'm watching every American service rifle on YouTube that's ever been in circulation and like how they worked and whatnot. So we're definitely on the same vibe there. I want to read some comments, guys. Okay.
One thing, Mario, like at the end of the day, whatever happens. So I want to say that what makes the American military different from, for example, its main rival, the Chinese military,
for sure,
is that they technological advantage for sure, but also they have experience like in real war.
Oh yeah.
So that's going to make a huge advantage if a war breaks between China. I don't think it will, but if that happens, the American Navy has real world experience, and a lot of these companies have started to use their new so you see unmanned vessels. That's new. That's like much of these small companies like Anduril, Palantir, they're testing their stuff, which is
I'm not a huge fan of Palantir, but I definitely see where you're coming from. Peter Thiel, if you can hear me, please stop spying on me. But it's true. But we also have to recognize drones.
Sure.
That's going to be a huge, hopefully it's not going to be a huge thing, but that could be a huge thing in a Sino-American conflict.
Sure.
And the same goes for an Iranian-American conflict. The use of drones is going to be revolutionary. We've already seen it in Russia and Ukraine from 21 until now. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It's like I'm watching a first-person shooter. It's insane the amount of footage now. You can make a movie out of that.
I'm going to make a bold call and say that we're going to avoid a Sino-American conflict. I think we're avoiding it. The so-called Thucydides trap. I think we're avoiding. I think we're going to avoid it.
I would agree, but I want to get to these comments because I know we have some other.
Your lips to God's ears,
Yeah.
We got some stuff that we want to air. We got reality check coming up. We got Frank Form coming up. We got our Sunday Scary. So I want to get through to all this. Opening up with a really strong one aimed towards Chairman McCabe. Some glaze, as the kids say, some glaze. Some Brooklyn GOP glaze, folks, from Thomas Kellogg, our friend upstate. The Brooklyn GOP should be an example for all GOPs across the state. That's coming from Thomas Kellogg.
I'll take it.
Great guy. He'll take it, Tom. He'll take it, bro. We got our friend, I think this is Filicomo. Yeah, Frank F. Music. We love him, Frank Filicomo. Liam, this was the first campaign I ever volunteered on down in Bay Ridge.
2017, he was a shout out to Frank. He was in the office. We had an office on 15th Avenue. He was there, every day. And he was a big part of. Unfortunately, I lost. That was I ran for city council 2017, and I lost the primary. But he was a big part of that. It was a really fun campaign. So thank you, Frank, and for everything you do. He's a very intelligent guy, smart guy.
Yeah, and everything wraps around now because we have the Frank Forum coming up soon. So that's incredible. We love it. Now I'm seeing Thomas had a second comment. People always blame the city for not winning elections. In 22, the Republicans underperformed upstate. Troy, can you speak to that?
Underperformed relative to where it had been trending. However, I think to safely win, as a model to consistently win statewide, we need to continue to trend the city. I think we hit 36% in that election.
Yeah.
That's normally the cited number I see. I think the goal should be 40 because then the city is so much of the state's population, and we are not pulling the numbers in Westchester County that prior statewide Republican victories had. We're making up for that by surging Long Island back. But there are also some cities in upstate that have decent populations. So
Nassau and Suffolk too. Can't forget about that.
Yep, Nassau. So, so yep, Long Island. So when I say we've trended back upstate, I very much am talking about the county red county map. There was this whole corridor that used to be blue in the Obama years, and one time in a Clinton election too. And most of that is red now, and there's a couple of blue around, the cities upstate, obviously Albany, Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse. So we can't count on just running up the score upstate for a victory. We need to do as well as we can upstate, certainly, and especially for down ballot. But I think the safe model for victory is doing what we did on Long Island in recent cycles, getting what we can, especially out of Orange County.
Yeah.
In terms of that's a really big area, I think, and then trying to hit let's call it even 38% in the city. You hit 38%, I think you're very close to victory.
And I just would say, a part of the strategy in Brooklyn is, we're running in some areas. We've probably run the largest slate we've run in a very long time. We're trying to, run a candidate in every seat, despite how hard it may be. And many of these candidates understand it's an uphill battle, but their presence on the ballot helps bring out voters. And, in 90% of the case, it's a top-down vote. But some people, because of their presence, it will be a bottom-up vote. And you saw that, I think, Athena Clark, who ran for city council last year, the previous Republican vote in that area, she doubled it, just by her presence on the ballot. And we're doing that. We've got Norman Ramsey, who's running for assembly out in Brownsville and East New York. And so their presence, I think, will help Bruce in the statewide ticket, because we've got to get people just to increase on an election district level, granular level, and just pull out, a few percentage points in some of these ADs, even to the ED. That's how we'll get our victory.
That's a good theory of the case for what I've been saying consistently throughout the club, and whoever will listen. Most are like, stop talking, Troy, and they move and they go.
But he was right.
But I'm right about this, because you just gave a couple of examples. We, from now on, starting the next available cycle and for eternity, we need to feel the candidate in every single district, even if they're going to get stomped, because of that bottom up presence going on. And I think to the folks in, let's say the tier 3, you're going to get stomped, but you're being a party builder. They got to be given a party post.
Absolutely.
And thanks for their effort.
I'll give you another example. We're running in all the congressional races, even against Brad Lander. It's a horrible human being. We have Jennifer Moore, who in many cases, it's hard to recruit. She took up the mantle, and now she's getting calls from Washington. People across Brooklyn are trying to help her run. So we have candidates in all of these battleground seats. Melvin Rivera running against Claire Valdez. We have some real races.
Jen Moore's that's the Brooklyn that stretches into Manhattan.
That's correct.
So you share with Staten Island for some, and then Manhattan for the other. And actually, I have to, we can't be talking about Brooklyn without stressing the absolute imperative of, we have to do better in Manhattan. I think, we could get to 40% Brooklyn. And if we haven't moved margins and recaptured something in Manhattan, I don't know if the math works out citywide or statewide still. We've got to do better in Manhattan.
I want to pick Chairman McCabe's brain about that exactly, actually. Yeah. And then I want to get to our other programming. We got the reality check coming up. We have Frank Forum coming up. I know you know Frank. I want to ask you, so in terms of strategy, Democrat defection from their party, they see, and a lot of this I've seen in Midwood. A lot of this I've seen in Bay Ridge, as a matter of fact, where we both live, and it's becoming more prevalent now that I'm seeing two different factions within the party: the more establishment party, the Bill Clintons, the Bill Kristols, to a smaller extent, the Barack Obama kind of, I'll call them moderates, but they're really not moderates of the party. and then we have Zohran Mamdani, we have Claire Valdez, the crazies, right? How much can we have Democrat defection improve our strategy for the GOP?
It's a great question. And I was trying to say this earlier. Really, we have a Democrat voting for us in every election. So even if you look at, let's say, the South Shore of Staten Island, and Staten Island itself is still overwhelmingly registered Democrat. So in almost all of these areas in New York City, New York State, even Democrats outnumber us. So there's a defection in every election. It happens. And that's what I was trying to say is that, this is not registered Republicans sort of beating, or we're getting Democrats to vote for us all the time. What I'd like to do is have them stay with us, register with us as well. But yeah, we absolutely have to do that. And I think we just stay the course by talking common sense. What we've been saying, and Troy mentioned this. This is going to be the majority party of the United States going forward. There's no question. And we're fighting communism. We're fighting totalitarianism. It's not even left and right. It's sort of like freedom, entrepreneurship, capitalism, liberty versus totalitarianism, communism. This is what the real new battle is. And we are positioned very well nationally, and I think we're positioned very well locally to talk to these Democrats. And I have done that myself. I've gone out there, at least on social media, and said, the day the moment the polls closed in Brooklyn on election night and the primary, the doors to the Republican Party are open. So come on board if you're out there, talk to your friends. We welcome you. Register. Certainly know that you have a common sense, sane person on the ballot on the Republican line, and many of these are Democrats that have come over. Melvin Rivera is one of them. There's many people. Ina Vernikoff was a Democrat. Alec Prokrasny was an actually elected Democrat. Ari Kagan was an elected Democrat, switched over. So, even like I said, my family growing up, I was an Irish Catholic Democrat Met fan, sort of born into those things. And
right.
I switched over. Just one quick story is, I was a Democrat. I registered as a Democrat in 1996. So I voted for Clinton, and I voted for some local Democrats. And shortly after that, I got a job in a liquor store. And Mike Long was the owner of that liquor store. I grew up with his kids. They were my friends and coaches. He has, many sons, and they were sort of my mentors in Bay Ridge. I worked in his liquor store, late 90s, and sort of in between, stocking the Merlot. And I was in college at the time. He sort of brought me over, and I left the Democratic Party and really got involved in the Conservative Party early on, and then eventually the Republican Party. So that's my origin story.
There you go. Your origin story, your lore.
I'll make a remark on what Liam said.
Of course.
So I just want to say, getting the Democrats back on our team, and also the DSA, like these folks who vote for Mamdani, they're not all brainwashed, crazy young people. Some of them are really struggling with the rent. And of course, if somebody tells me I'm going to freeze your rent, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to vote for you. I don't care what you stand for. I'm struggling. I cannot eat tomorrow, so I have to. So using this boogeyman of communism is not going to work anymore. I think they should be explained in a very simple and commonsensical language that why freezing the rent is not in your favor long term. They don't understand this. They just want this short term thing. I'm not gonna pay rent more. But if you actually explain them why this is not in your favor, they have common sense. Not all of them are crazy people, and they're going to come back. And I'm sure even DSA folks can come back too.
I agree. I also think we have to be sort of the party of opportunity, and it's not only just scaring them against what communism is, which was part of it, but some of them haven't experienced it. And I'll just say this: the strongest Republicans in Brooklyn, in our city, especially in South Brooklyn, are from the former Soviet Union or from communist China. Yep. They are our strongest Republicans. And Congresswoman Malliotakis, whose mother fled communist Cuba. So our strongest are the people who have actually lived through it. So hopefully we can help them get their message out. One thing I want to do locally is tell their story so they can say, look, we came from this. And the other thing is I want to say, look, opportunity lies in entrepreneurship. It lies in capitalism, that your path to success and bettering your life is through ownership, an ownership society, an economic mobile society is really what we're offering. And I'll just tell you one thing I want to do in Brooklyn is tinkering with this website, trying to revamp our social media. I want to have a jobs page, and I want to have it to be sort of just a place where you can find out about work, get a job at the city, state, federal level if you want to work in the public sector. And I want private sector people to sort of look for resumes on the Brooklyn GOP page. And I want to invite economists in. I want to invite, job creators in to help stimulate local economy as best we can. And if we can do that, maybe we can begin to turn some people more towards our side of things.
I really like that. Before we conclude our live programming portion of the show, I want to ask you all one quick question, kind of a speed round, because we have a party chair, our paramilitary commander, and our military expert. Okay. Your favorite Republican president?
Trump.
Beginning with Chairman. Trump. Beautiful.
Oh, no doubt Nixon.
No doubt Nixon. Okay.
Favorite Republican president? I'm going to go with Theodore Roosevelt.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I got to be honest. I love President Trump. He's our great leader. But I'm Nixon maxing tonight. I'm going to have to go with Nixon. We got to be Nixon maxing at all times, folks. It's true. But all right, that pretty much concludes it. Where can we find you guys, Liam? Where can we find you? Where can we find your work, the party?
Sure, great question. We've had a lot of different handles out there, and one of the bane of my existence these past few months is trying to bring it all back under one handle and one title. So it's Brooklyn GOP. That's on X, on Facebook, and on Instagram. BKLYN GOP, and you can find us there. And by the way, our new website, which we're working on, is also going to be bklyngop.org, and you can find us there, and you can find me at BKLiam on all the channels. That's where you can find me. So please follow us on the social media, Brooklyn GOP. We need it.
Dr. Nayebpour, where can we find you?
So on Twitter, my first and last name at Amin Nayebpour, AMIN dot NAYEBPOUR. And on Instagram, my last name, NAYEBPOUR.
It's kind of baller. It's just your last name.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I took all my family's.
I love it. Yeah.
Nobody can deny that.
And Troy, where can we find you?
You can find me at Troy M. Olson on all socials, and that's with an O-N, Mario, not an E-N. I'm not from Bay Ridge. It would have been great to be from Bay Ridge, but the Olsons that were in Bay Ridge, that hailed from Bay Ridge, they were an E-N, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There are two kinds of people: those that are from Bay Ridge and those that wish they were.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you are.
And for little old me, I don't want you to follow me anywhere except for NYYRC_campaigns. Do me a huge favor. Follow NYYRC and NYYRC campaigns on X and Instagram. And one more favor before we get to the reality check with Iulia, before we get to the Sunday scaries with James, before we get to the Frank Forum with Frank and this handsome young gentleman right here, become a member of the New York Young Republican Club. If you are not, become a patriot, nyyrc.com/join. We have a bunch of amazing media coming straight your way. Thank you for watching the New York Young Republican Club podcast.
City life got you down? At Traveloo, we've got your back. Whether you're dreaming of sightseeing in jolly old London or searching for the best pizza in the heart of Naples, your next adventure is just a few clicks away. From the romantic streets of Paris to Gaudi's breathtaking masterpieces in Barcelona, don't miss the chance of a lifetime. And if city life isn't your vibe, how does a sun-soaked Grecian beach sound? Traveloo. Experience Europe.
Thinking a lot lately, and look, things seem to be going well. We have the White House. By a lot of metrics, we're winning. So why does it still feel like we're losing ground? Or that every week there's something that just doesn't sit right? And I think I've landed on it. The single biggest problem in America right now isn't immigration or even the left. It's weakness. A total creeping weakness on both the individual and the institutional level that has infected everything, from our courts, our culture, to our government. People have stopped being willing to stand for anything that costs them something, and when a civilization stops producing people willing to pay a price, it stops being able to defend itself. And in some cases, it's not that the people don't stand for anything, because they do. It's just that they are standing for something that's handed to them, that's manufactured, something that has absolutely nothing to do with reality or how the world actually works. And the sad thing is they don't even know it, because that's what cognitive warfare does. It fills you up with someone else's agenda and convinces you it was yours all along. And I was thinking about this because of something that happened in Congress this week. Supreme Court Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett testified before a House Appropriations Subcommittee to address the court's budget request. Barrett sat before the committee and used the moment to explain in detail how the threats against her and her family have personally affected her.
And those statistics sound abstract, but being on the receiving end of them is not. So I thought I would just share a little bit about how the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me to, or my children, to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest, and I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it, and I didn't know how to respond because maybe I lack imagination, but I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one.
The threats against Supreme Court justices are real, they're criminal, and the left should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for every single one of them. But do we really think that story, told publicly on camera before Congress, doesn't signal something to the people doing the threatening? Do you think it doesn't tell them their campaign of intimidation is working? Because it does. I mean, just compare how she ruled before these threats started happening and after. When you explain how scared you are in front of the whole country, you're not really building sympathy. You're making yourself even more of a target and handing your enemies a scoreboard. And given that Barrett was effectively the deciding vote on birthright citizenship, the timing of this particular emotional testimony is strange. Now, compare that to this.
Some people have been spreading the rumor that perhaps you're going to withdraw. What's Clarence Thomas going to do?
I'd rather die than withdraw. If they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process. Not for the purpose of serving on the Supreme Court, but for the purpose of not being driven out of this process. I would not be scared. I don't like bullies. I've never run from bullies. I never cry uncle, and I'm not going to cry uncle today, whether I want to be on the Supreme Court or not.
What a difference, because it's not like Clarence Thomas was sitting in this cushy situation over there. He had his entire character assassinated during his confirmation hearings. He's had the left try to run him off the court for, 30 plus years? So same left-wing intimidation machine, and his answer, come get me. That's the difference, not just in temperament, in understanding of what the moment requires. And hey, we miss the moment sometimes too, it seems. The conservative movement put Barrett on that court. We did that because we needed a woman, because of optics, because for all the talk about knowing what a woman is, we apparently didn't know what a Supreme Court justice needs to be. Barrett was a DEI appointment dressed up in conservative clothing, and now we're watching the left use her own humanity against her, and it's working. Not because she's a bad person, she's probably perfectly delightful, but because she was put in a position that requires a particular kind, a special kind of resolve. And resolve is not distributed equally, regardless of what the egalitarians tell you. The price for that appointment is being paid right now in birthright citizenship and mail-in ballots, in every 5-4 decision. And I keep coming back to the same word for all of it: feminization. a wholesale feminization of American institutions because feelings have apparently become the primary operating system of power. The problem with a feminized culture, though, is that it's not just soft. It's easily manipulated. The left knows this. I mean, they've built an entire machine around it. You manufacture outrage, you film the moment it peaks, and suddenly the people who are supposed to be enforcing the law are the ones on the defensive. And do you wonder why these enforcement operations keep generating the maximum amount of chaos?
If you don't think this is fucked up, you don't know what it means to be an American. And every one of us should be angry right now in this moment and willing to stand up for our values, the values that have always made this country great. And anyone who's just letting these MAGA autocrats get away with this needs to fight or get out of the way. It's time for us to stop this. So if you're on your way to Maine right now, thank you. If you're standing up and fighting in your community, thank you. If you're doing everything you can to protect our values, thank you. But if you're someone who can do more, then we need to do more. We need to do more right now because lives are on the line. Lives are getting lost. Because
boy, what an angry little fella. Imagine showing a hint of this kind of passion when an illegal kills an American, but alas. This is Seth Moulton, a sitting congressman telling people to obstruct federal law enforcement. And then everyone acts shocked when enforcement operations turn volatile. You can't pour gasoline on a situation and then cry about the fire. But of course, we all know that's exactly what they're trying to do. And it worked. Well, sorta. DHS Secretary Mullen quietly issued a directive halting most ICE traffic stops nationwide without warning Trump. Just, we're pausing one of the most effective deportation tools we have because it looks bad. This all happened after 2 fatal ICE shootings took place within 6 days. Both men had final orders of removal, and both situations involved subjects attempting to flee or use a vehicle against officers during the enforcement. Go figure. The Maine Attorney General's office confirmed that one of the migrants, Juan Sebastian Guerrero, attempted to flee in his vehicle in the direction of the officer before he was shot. Yeah, I did not see that one coming. But anyway, Trump apparently found out watching the news, and within 24 hours he reversed it. Posting on Truth Social, we cannot give up one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, the traffic stop. Once we do, we are playing right into the criminals' hands. Good. Good. Right call. But the fact that it happened at all, that DHS blinked without even telling the president, is exactly the weakness I'm talking about. It's not just individual people, it's the reflex to accommodate the mob baked into the system itself. ICE agents are now facing a 1,300% increase in vehicle ramming attacks during enforcement operations. And the first instinct was to pause traffic stops because, I don't know, it looked bad on CNN. This is the weakness right there. You cannot give the mob a veto. You cannot run a country's immigration enforcement based on what cable news decides to do with the footage. And you cannot allow a pattern where every time an enforcement operation turns deadly because someone resisted, the response is to dial back enforcement. The smarter play, and this is what the administration is starting to do and needs to do a lot more of, is it's making enforcement so pervasive and so credible that confrontations become less necessary in the first place. So that might look like E-Verified that makes it impossible to work without status, benefits restrictions, banking pressure, employer audits, the kind of institutional squeeze that changes a calculation without requiring a street confrontation. Eisenhower proved this in 1954 with Operation Wetback, a combination of targeted enforcement and sheer credible threat. A significant number of people left on their own because they believed the full weight of the state was coming for them. Because the truth is, deportation is not a punishment. And actually, if you think about it, it might be the most generous thing we can do. Now, hear me out. The same people who spend their time telling us how third world countries are full of ancient wisdom, rich culture, beautiful communities, hardworking people who just want a better life. Those same people are losing their minds over the idea of sending those wonderful, culturally rich, community enriching people back to those wonderful, culturally rich communities. So, which is it? Because if the people are so great and the countries they come from are so great, then wouldn't sending them back be a form of restoration? Wouldn't it be like the ultimate act of giving back? You're returning your best people to their homeland and rebuilding the Banana Republic with exactly the talent that the Banana Republic apparently produced. Win-win, right? But no, apparently that's a human rights violation. So either the countries are great and the people belong there, or the countries are hellholes, which they are, that nobody should be forced to return to. In which case, maybe stop telling me how much wisdom and culture they have. You should not have people in a functioning country who take time out of their day to stand in front of a federal officer executing a lawful deportation order because they've been taught their whole lives that the law for some reason doesn't apply when your feelings say otherwise. And speaking of feelings, I need to tell you guys about something that popped up on my TikTok while I was doom scrolling at an unreasonable hour of the night. And stay with me because this is exactly what I've been talking about. This is the weakness, the suicidal empathy. This is what happens when you take years of radical feminist ideology and let it run unchecked. You don't get liberation, you get something that looks a lot more like cancer. A slow, quiet, ideological cancer that convinces you your feelings are a compass when they're actually a trap.
So this is part 2 of me answering your guys' questions in the comments. The reason we can't go to another country is because Afghan passports are just not strong enough. So I really like this comment because it reminded me of a time when I went to Chicago with friends. We took the wrong exit and we were immediately pulled over by police and we were told to leave the area because it was too dangerous. So yeah, do what you will with that info.
Oh, girl. As someone who has personally spent time on the south side of Chicago, granted, never made it to Kabul, maybe one day, but I honestly think you might be running into a little bit more trouble than just gangbangers over there. Anyway, meet Alex Sunny from Kentucky, who met a man on Snapchat, I think about 2 years ago, met him in person exactly once, and she is now moving permanently to Afghanistan to be with her one true love, under Taliban rule. How lovely, where women cannot travel without a male guardian, cannot show their faces in public, get an education, or, have a little thing called legal recourse in case things go sideways. But she went to Chicago and was fine, so it's all good. She's got it. All joking aside though, have you guys watched that 1991 movie called, I think it was Not Without My Daughter with Sally Field? It's about this American woman who marries an Iranian, all's well until he brings her and their daughter to Iran to meet his family, after which he basically takes his wife and daughter hostage. And yeah, they had to escape, not walk out the door like normal humans, escape through Turkey on foot to get out. Alex Sunny apparently filed this under travel inspiration, but I genuinely feel sad for her, I do, because she didn't get here on her own. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to move to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan for a Snapchat boyfriend or husband in a vacuum. This is the result of a slow, quiet drip of this sick leftist ideology that maybe started with some good intentions, I'm sure, but somehow ended up here at my feelings about a man that I met online are more valid than the lived reality of every woman currently living under the Taliban. And the cruelest part of all of this, of the ideology, of the cognitive warfare, of the you go girl culture run completely off the rails, is that it destroys your ability to tell the difference between someone who loves you and someone who is using you. Alex Sunny cannot tell the difference between a man who loves her and a man who is using her because she was never taught that those are different things. The ICE protesters cannot tell the difference between people who actually care about their communities and a political machine that is using their bodies as human shields in front of federal agents. And Amy Coney Barrett, who went through something genuinely awful because the left manufactured and amplified every threat against her on purpose, she cannot tell the difference between a culture that wants her to succeed and a mob that is using her pain to move her votes. They are all being used, and they think they are being loved. This is the power we're up against. A machine that is very good at making useful idiots feel like heroes. This is all the same refusal to accept that reality exists outside of what you feel about it. Same collapse of the kind of resolve and prudence that actually keeps people and civilizations alive and functioning. This isn't just a crisis of womanhood or of radical leftist indoctrination. It's a crisis of what it means to be American, of what it means to live in a country with rules, borders, institutions, and the key, and this is the key, the backbone to defend them. When you stop teaching people that reality exists outside of their feelings, this is what you get. And that's the reality check with Iulia.
Welcome to the Frank Forum podcast. My name is Frank Filicomo. I'm the founder and editor of thefrankforum.com, and I am once again joined by my good friend Troy Olson. He is the Sergeant at Arms of the New York Young Republican Club and co-author of The Emerging Populist Majority. Troy, is it true that you're here tonight to go to the Bon Jovi concert that's happening, I guess, at Madison Square Garden? I was on my way here, and I was like, this is like an unusual amount of Bon Jovi T-shirts. Maybe he's making a comeback.
You don't think that's a coincidence that maybe there's a Gen X centric reunion?
Yeah, I don't know.
So there's a Bon Jovi concert.
There must have. Did you not see that?
I didn't know that, but you told me just now.
Are you a fan, by the way?
I actually am.
Okay, all right. Then I'm not going to say what I was going to say.
Okay, let me clarify this.
I think he's great.
My older brother had the Bon Jovi CDs. He was very huge in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And I think when you have an older brother, I think you very much are raised on the music your older brother listens to. I got, of course, a lot more into grunge.
Yeah.
And that was like my first branching out. But
well, listen, then I'm going to scratch out what I was going to say.
I want you to say it. I want you to say
Living on a Prayer. Could hear it on repeat constantly.
Living on a Prayer. And then I once
good hair though. He's got good hair.
Yeah, he had good hair. And then there was that one vocal effect on that song in the late '90s they had, and
yeah,
I don't want to imitate it because I'm gonna just derail what we have planned here.
I kind of want you to imitate it, but we won't.
We won't do it.
So Troy, today I wanted to talk a lot about iPhones, technology, computers, and all the rest, because I think I feel pretty dualistic about the role of technology when it comes to cultivating community. On one hand, it's very clear to me that there is a serious con to too much technology, right? We're increasingly glued to our phones. We're increasingly kind of, shut away in our apartments and looking at our computers or streaming.
Yeah.
But on the other side of things, I do believe there is some benefit to the phone. For example, you have apps today like, Bumble BFF is one of them. There's a Meetup app.
What is Bumble BFF?
Bumble BFF. I'm glad you asked. I've written
for our listeners out there.
I've written about this for National Review Online before. But Bumble BFF is, I'm sure you're familiar with the dating app Bumble.
Bumble is.
Are you not familiar with the dating app Bumble?
Well, I mean, yeah, I started to date myself here.
So basically, it's a
dating apps really. I've been married for 13.
Oh, okay. All right.
13 years.
Yeah.
I don't believe dating apps took off until I was actually a couple years married.
Okay. So that makes sense. Well, Bumble is an app where the woman messages you first.
Oh.
That's what it is. Meaning that no one meets.
So the cultural, cultural reference I knew Bumble from was Pete Davidson, in an SNL character, being upset that he had no matches in Bumble, but his historical dating record would say precisely the opposite.
It would say precisely
he's
the
had some
opposite.
pretty interesting relationships.
That's undoubtedly true.
So that was clearly a character joke.
Bumble BFF is an offshoot of Bumble, and it's just for platonic friendships.
Oh.
And this has really been on the rise, and there have been multiple articles, in fact, about people who've met platonically on Bumble BFF. And I think that just speaks to the fact that people are exploring other avenues to cultivate social connection.
Yes.
Because it used to be, especially with dating, that people would approach others at a bar or something.
Yeah.
And now I think there's an obvious trepidation around, IRL social encounters, to the point where we're looking at our phones and saying, maybe we could do this behind a screen. So again, this goes back to where I'm kind of ambivalent about apps and social media and things like that, because on the one hand, the goal, if we're talking about communitarianism and reviving America's civic culture, the goal is to have it done organically at third places. But the fact of the matter is that we're now in a different era where especially Gen Z is utilizing social media. So I think that probably the best thing we could do is instead of waxing nostalgic about the times when we didn't have phones or we had flip phones, I think the best thing we could do is to say, okay, this technology is a reality in our lives, and we now need to learn how to use it for good.
Yeah, I mean, first the internet, but then the internet on the smartphone, which is when, and I was a very late adopter to especially the smartphone.
Yes, as was I.
I waited as long as possible.
Yeah.
I had to be mocked by my good friend being like, I just got out of law school and was like, hey, Troy, I can't take you seriously.
Would you have a BlueBerry?
As a lawyer.
A BlackBerry?
No, I had like a flip phone. And he was just like, Troy, I can't take you serious as a lawyer if you don't get a smartphone. So I got a smartphone, and I've deeply regretted it ever since. I knew I was crossing into another dimension when I got it, though. I could sense it.
Yeah.
But to seriously answer the question, this is a tool.
Yes.
And tools have always sort of depended on the user in the long run. And I think it's easy to get caught up in that and forget about that. But I think we're now in the phase of dialing it back. And you see this, I think millennials actually remember the world pre all of this. Gen Z doesn't necessarily have that vocabulary as much, but they are beginning to pick up, I'm sensing, a nostalgia for the pre-smartphone world, or even the early internet. I think the internet's really amazing. I'm nostalgic for the early years of the internet when it was the Wild West and very exciting.
Well, that seems to be coming back under Musk now.
Yeah.
I mean, X, I quipped about this in an article, but X looks more like 4chan than it does like Twitter.
Well, and I'm not even talking about that so much where people are like just kind of saying whatever they want on message boards or whatever. I'm more so referring to the pursuit of finding information out in the early internet, and like being able to kind of see if you're looking hard enough the history of the world.
Yeah,
was very fascinating to me. And I guess I would have been a kid when the internet was going, and it was dial up. So we had dial up, and so you don't spend a ridiculous amount of time on it yet.
That's right.
Everything takes deliberation and effort, and that's maybe the key words here. Deliberation and effort.
Yes.
There's very little deliberation in the current internet on your smartphone world, and there's not a ton of effort that's needed.
Well, I think to your point that, the computer, for example, it could obviously be a hugely important tool. The problem is when it becomes all-encompassing and when it becomes totally ubiquitous. And I think that what you're seeing right now, especially with Gen Z, is a reaction to too much screen time, to too much being online. In fact, so, I went to high school in Brooklyn at a school called Edward R. Murrow. And I read a couple of years ago.
Great school.
Yeah, huge school, about 4,000 students, maybe more.
That would be so overwhelming if I went through that school. I wouldn't have any idea what to do with that.
Well, so a few years ago, I saw that there was a New York Times article about Edward R. Murrow, and I'm thinking, what is there possibly to write about the high school that I went to? It turns out that there's a kind of neo-Luddite club that has formed. And this was a bottom-up effort on the part of the student body. And it was a small group, maybe 15 or 20 or so students. And they said, you know what? We don't want our iPhones anymore. Yeah. And so they traded in their smartphones and they got clunky dumb phones. And they said, we're going to like go to the park and read classic literature and like play guitar and just not have iPhones anymore. And I kind of thought to myself, like, I don't know that this is an answer to how, you know, atomized we've become and how much we've let technology kind of take over our lives. But I do think that it's a very real reaction to just too much screen time.
Yeah, I think whatever paradigm we're in seems to be exhausting itself.
Yeah.
And people are looking for something different. And maybe they're like a neo-Luddite, or maybe they're purely in the nostalgia world. I lean more towards I know I'm going to be on and almost on all the time.
Yeah.
On whether it's group chats, group texts. I have so many requests that come by me every day from different paths of my life.
It's impossible to go without it.
I know I can't really opt out of much of anything, but what I can do is when I have that moment of where I'm breathing to relax, the things I do when totally to my own devices, spending time with family.
Yeah.
But when I am interfacing with technology on my free time, it is very much in the nostalgia world realm. I'm nostalgic for the pre-smartphone phones. My greatest memories with a phone were sitting in the freedom of just getting your license and that first year with your car, which is I'm sorry, but the world just opens up to you if you haven't had your license and you're that formative years and your first year with your car, and God knows you're probably a terrible driver, but you're just sitting there and I'm playing Snake on my Nokia brick cell phone. That is some of my favorite memories with a phone.
You know, I'm a little younger than you, but I don't really have a recollection of life without phones. I mean, I have a vague one.
Yeah.
But you know, it reminds me of this term I read. There's this book called the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that.
It sounds like a great title.
It's a great title.
Yeah.
And the author in the book, he basically concocts these words that don't exist. And one of them, I think you'll enjoy this, Troy, is anemoia. Have you heard that term?
I have, is it a word he invented for that?
It's a non-word.
It's a non-word?
It doesn't actually exist.
Define it, because I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
No, define what it means,
All right.
though.
So anemoia is when you get this sort of pang of nostalgia for a time that you never actually experienced.
So that makes me think of a 2012-ish Woody Allen film called Midnight in Paris.
Okay.
And I don't know if the film calls it that, but the character in it runs a nostalgia shop, and he is ultimately nostalgic for a time and a place.
Yeah.
Paris in the 1920s that, of course, he didn't exist in.
Right.
And then, spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't seen Midnight, my apologies. Sign off now.
I think we'll be all right.
I'll give you a second. But then
we'll put big spoiler alert titles on the.
But he gets back into the 1920s and gets to know. It's a Flight of Fancy movie. And he gets back in the 1920s and gets to know those characters like Gertrude Stein and Ernest Hemingway or whatever, or F. Scott Fitzgerald, and they're nostalgic. Some of those characters are nostalgic for Paris in the 1880s or somewhere else in the. So I think that there is this intrinsic human need and desire that's always been with us, whether we have the smartphone or not, to want to belong to an age that you can read about, but can't possibly be a part of. And I think one of the reasons that exists within us is you can actually discover, as much as the historical record allows you, the events of a decade in the past. You can kind of read through it, get to know it, and in theory, if you experienced it, you could kind of sift your way through it.
Yeah.
And it's understandable and it's already happened. Whereas the present, you are navigating in real time. The future, I've got a bill to pay next month. The future can be a little scary.
That's right. Yeah.
So the past can be painful, But I think a lot of times the past is actually quite powerful, and which is why nostalgia works so well. Because even people with painful memories in their life, human beings are remarkably resilient, and we memory hole, and forget a lot of the painful experiences. But nostalgia works even beyond the memory of the person. It really, most of nostalgia is that word. I think I'm nostalgic for eras I never lived in. I love the 1950s. I love the 1990s. I was alive for the 1990s. But if you talk to me in the 1990s, at the time I was living them, I didn't think I was living in an amazing decade. I only know that.
Sure.
I only know that today, looking back.
Oh, you only know you love her when you let her go.
Yeah.
Is that Aristotle who said that?
Yes.
But
so yeah, this has been with us for thousands of years.
no, it has been. In fact, if you look on X or whatever, you'll see all these accounts that post, diners from the 1950s with root beer floats and the little jukeboxes at everyone's table. And you're like, and there are times where I look at those and I go, man, only to be back at those. And then I go, I didn't exist when that was a thing.
You didn't exist.
So anemoia is the perfect word.
If you look at my Twitter feed, there's a good amount of those retweets of those diners.
Well, this is something that we've actually, I don't know if you recall this, but we kind of butt heads on this before. You wrote an article for the blog a couple years ago or something.
We call it the site. We don't call it the blog. We should call it the site.
Yes,
the Frank Forum, our site.
Yes, the Frank Forum.
Because a blog sounds like we're writing about baseball in 2003.
That's true. All right. So
by the way, I love baseball.
You wrote an article for the site a few years ago. I can't remember what it was, but it was something very nostalgic. You were waxing nostalgic, probably about the 1950s America, and the small town.
That sounds like me.
And I very promptly wrote a response to that, saying that conservatives need to avoid the trap, the reactionary trap.
Yeah.
Of things were, past tense, using past tense all the time.
Yeah.
Things were so much better when, et cetera, et cetera. And part of me believes that, that's true, but then another part of me believes that there's nothing wrong with nostalgia and wanting to kind of turn back the clock. It's a very natural impulse to want to turn back the clock. But I think that we do have to grapple with our times, and we have to say, okay, we have smartphones now.
Yeah.
We're not all gathered around the tube anymore. We do live this increasingly atomized existence with cell phones.
Yep.
We can't chuck them into the river, or, I guess we could form neo-Luddite clubs. I don't think that's terribly productive, though.
No.
I think what we have to do is say that this is here with us to stay, and we have to use it in a way that's productive. And so I want to give an example. It was the last piece written for the Frank Forum by a new contributor, Eric Ligon. And it's called How I Built a Third Place Platform Using Lessons from Gardening. And basically what he talks about is he created this app called Linger. And in the app, it's a platform for third places. And for viewers who don't know, third places are not home, they're not work, they're places outside of home and work where these sort of casual encounters happen.
Yeah.
And so, my third place is my local dive bar, and we have open mics there every Thursday. And it really is a Cheers-like scenario where everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
That's a third place. And so this platform that he created allows people to actually go into this vast database of different third places around the country. And if you have one that you think should be in the database, you could actually add it. You make an account and you add it yourself. And so in effect, what you have is, a country-wide map of third places. So if you're in Nebraska and you go, where's somewhere I could go meet people near me, you would just type in your zip code or whatever, and a bunch of places would come up. And so I think this is an example of someone seeing that, apps are a part of our everyday life, and saying, what, they don't need to be TikTok.
No.
They could be something that cultivates community.
It could be anything.
It could be anything. Yeah. And so I think that it's a really beautiful article, and this quote stood out to me in particular, where he says, third places are ecosystems like my wildflower garden. They are notoriously difficult to engineer from the top down. They are best cultivated cooperatively on good land to suit the resources and needs of the locale. And I think that's so beautiful because there is an effort Troy, and I'm curious to have your thoughts on this, to sort of like manufacture community from the top down. Like, so I'll give you an example of this, and I use this frequently. In 2023, when there was all this talk of the loneliness epidemic, from the advisory report, Senator Chris Murphy, who I believe is Connecticut?
Yeah.
He said, okay, I'm going to introduce legislation saying that there's going to be an Office of Social Connection in the White House, and we're going to write all these white papers and things like that. And, you know, we're going to have experts deal with this problem. Maybe you could talk a little bit about why civil society should be the answer and not top-down technocrats in Washington.
Yeah, and let me just quickly defend civil society.
Yeah, please.
The reason you want to shrink government is not because you're an ideological libertarian necessarily. It's because you want to grow civil society. And there's probably nothing more lame than a government pointy head coming up and saying, we need to socialize more.
That's right.
It's like kind of like being in the military where you have mandatory fun days.
Something about mandatory fun doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, and so and
coercive fun.
You referenced Cheers, and this is gonna be a weird break-off point, but I think of the sitcom, which is sort of another thing that I'm nostalgic for. Just like the good old-fashioned sitcom.
Yeah.
But sitcoms came in two varieties in the majority. You would have the family sitcom, which I love, and then you had the workplace sitcom. But then there was another type of situation comedy that was the third places, and Cheers is a really good example of that. Kind of get it with Friends and Seinfeld, but because they would have like the coffee house, diner, hangout places. But those are good examples of third places in, I guess, the American sitcom canon. But if I'm to think growing up, I think bowling alleys, I mean, this is quite literally bowling alone, you know, but bowling leagues and bowling alleys and things like that, which is, it's not like you got to be, you know, and that's not, being on a bowling team is not a massive commitment.
No, it's really not.
And it's you know, it's a sport, but it's like an adult sport that you know you don't have to be a physical specimen to be a great bowler, and then you don't need to be an amazing bowler to have a good time. You could just be in a league and be hanging out with your team and friends.
The Honeymooners, Jackie Gleason was a bowler, and that was a source of community for him.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Friends, and you know, a central part of Friends, and maybe the central part of Friends, is Cafe Perk.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And
it was it Cafe Perk?
Isn't it Cafe Perk?
Central Perk.
Central Perk.
Yeah, I knew. It was
I'm not an avid Friends watcher, but
I'm embarrassed that I was able to correct that.
It was, but you know, this is something about Friends that I think is worth kind of noting, which is there was this couch in Central Perk where, like clockwork, they would all be there.
Yeah.
In fact, if someone wasn't there, it was like, oh, there's a problem here.
Right.
You know, what happened to Phoebe?
And the tagline of that show was that it's about the time in your life where your friends are your family.
That's right.
And I think
I'll be there for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think once there comes a time in your life where now your friends are your family, where you switch it up.
Yeah.
And I think those having those deliberate third places becomes a struggle. I think it's the easiest when you are in your 20s. In fact, when I read about people in their 20s today lonely, I get really sad because
that's right.
Because I when I was in my 20s, I was sort of running the opposite way. I was getting married, and I kind of was a little sick of the hanging out. I was like, no, I want to go start my life. I don't want to, and all specifically, and I hopefully this doesn't, if they happen to come across this doesn't hurt anyone's feelings or they don't know what I'm talking about. It's vague enough. But at one point, I remember being out with the group, and I was like, oh, this is great. I hope this never changes.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything at the time. I just thought it. And then I got home and I talked to my wife. This is probably the first year of our marriage. And I'm like, I literally hope most things change very soon, actually. Which is one of the reasons we got married and we're starting our own life together. And
right.
while, college friends are great and all, but like I don't want to do this forever.
Yeah.
Because it felt like
Well, that is-
extended adolescence. It felt like, you know, kind of standing still.
Well, not to spoil the whole show
but
of
yeah.
Friends, but that is kind of how Friends ends, right? They all have their own families and they stop living together.
It's a natural ending. Yeah.
But I want to circle back to
Yep,
the
sorry.
Central Perk.
Yep.
Because that cafe was a community hub for them.
Yeah, it was.
And, you know, what happened, you know, I think back at such an important, you know, paradigm changing point in our history, which is COVID, COVID lockdowns and everything like that.
Yeah.
And cafes, you know, I read this in an article by a guy named Alan Ehrenhalt. Cafes went from being essential third places and community hubs where you would see your neighbor and you would sit next to people. And they turned into what he called utilitarian caffeine dispensers. And so what you had was cafes where, you know, you would sit here and then the chair next to it had an X on it or it wasn't there at all.
Yeah.
And then you had another chair. And then another thing that happened during COVID is that you had all these pop-up cafes,
Yep.
you know, or they were on wheels or something. And it was just kind of grab and go.
Yeah.
You know, the whole point of a third place is to hang around
Yeah.
for an indefinite amount of time. The problem is that COVID made things too kind of sterile and less welcoming and cozy.
Yeah.
And then also, a lot of young people find prices to be prohibitive.
Yeah.
And they're not, you know, a cocktail is like $12 at a bar or something. And so this is like the driest generation. Like 18 to 29-year-olds or whatever are not going to bars and meeting people. They're largely, first of all, they're doing mocktails more than they're doing cocktails.
Yeah.
And second of all, they're foregoing the bar for the most part. You know, I was in the city on a weekend recently, and the bars were like pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't normal.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so the opposite of how. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest, and drinking is
it's what you do.
It is what you do,
Yeah.
and it's not.
You put it in your cereal.
What would be someone's? Oh, maybe you're drinking too much.
Right.
Alcoholism toward it. It actually is such a natural social part of living there.
Right.
And that's one, but two, I felt like, you know, as a millennial, millennials drank.
Yeah.
Drank in college, or in law school, at a bar review Friday nights. We drank, and I see these articles with Gen Z not drinking
Yes.
as much, and
look,
I wonder how anyone's meeting anyone. Yeah,
no,
I do.
Look, you could make the case that, well, drinking is really bad for you.
Yep.
The last Surgeon
all things in
General,
moderation.
The last Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, who did the loneliness report,
Yep.
also did a separate report before he left office about how drinking, even in moderation, is bad for you. And everybody was like, screw you, dude.
You know what?
Like
Get outta here.
no one wants to hear that.
Yeah.
Now we haven't had a Surgeon General since, which is noteworthy.
And
Like,
we'll never have one again.
we still don't have a Surgeon General, but this administration and Dr. Oz has actually made it a point to say drinking is a social lubricant. And there's obviously going to be, you know, some detrimental things about drinking, especially in excess.
Yeah.
But that's where you go and you let your hair down, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you talk to your buddy. The week's over. You know, there was even in Washington Square Park, right around where I went to school at NYU, there was a guy who did a cigarette meetup.
Yeah.
And everybody, and listen, it probably stunk to high hell.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sure everybody got really ill that day. No, I don't think that happened. but look, and I'm not advocating for smoking cigarettes, especially at the...
Are we allowed to?
Especially at these prices.
Yeah, especially at these prices, I tell you.
But the fact of the matter is that, you know, you could say like, oh, this is so bad for you. And how could someone think of doing a gathering of Marlboro Red smokers? But the fact of the matter is that everybody there was talking to each other. Hey, can I bum a cigarette? Here you go. I wasn't there. This is from reports. But that to me makes me raise the question of, well, what's worse for you? Smoking and drinking, but being in communion with other people, or drinking kale shakes and being super healthy, but having no social connection.
Right.
And I'm not a doctor, in case you didn't know, but I would say that the latter is got to be way worse for you.
Yeah, I'll just I haven't read that report from the Surgeon General about how drinking even in moderation is bad for you.
Even in moderation.
But let's play that out. That is probably only looking at the literal medical aspect of life, and that is not how life is actually led. And I'm not saying you have to drink, and people that don't drink at all go out and meet people, but
you get what you do is you get a Heineken 0.0.
but you also let's say if you drink in moderation, but you have a wife, a supportive spouse that loves you and cares about you, and that love and care that you met maybe doing that social activity at one point, at least that was the starting point, it kept you, it's actually being with someone who cares about you keeps you alive, I think, so many more years than whatever alcohol or whatever cuts out of your life. Because let's say if you are going too much on that, they're going to tell you about that because they care about you. But they're also going to, if you're not doing any of it, like life is much more nuanced than any white paper can possibly show you with mountains of statistics at the end of the day. And I think that's what the medical community in general,
that's why I said
sometimes misses.
I said to someone in the midst of COVID in 2020, you recall if you watched the news channels, on the bottom right, they would have the COVID death count.
Yeah, as if that was the only thing that counted.
I remember thinking to myself, where's the deaths of despair count?
Oh, yeah.
Because loneliness is a killer.
I'll get into my my screenplay is literally not the TV series one, but the movie screenplay is literally about that idea of the deaths of despair.
Yeah,
it was because it was inspired by one of those many deaths of despair articles that came out around COVID, and it was about a GWAT veteran who would in his apartment complex build wood structures, just do woodworking out in the quad.
Right.
And the article was about his eventual suicide. And so it was, I remember reading that and just kind of internalizing. Obviously, I'm close to that idea in terms of, he's a veteran.
Yeah.
And in the conflicts I served in. And I looked at, and by this point, COVID had gone on long enough that the temporary high of the stay at home, stay safe, all of that had passed, and then the arguments of that was too far, and all of those had socially played out too. So we were kind of almost at the coming down the mountain at that point, where you kind of had the beginnings of a look back period, and because now I think we're so far past that we've almost. Life has moved so fast that we barely even look back anymore.
True.
But this was right at that sweet spot, and that article was one of the crystallizing moments where I'm like, nothing we did here has made society any better.
Yes.
And to me, it was that death of despair and all of that that really crystallized it.
I argue, and I'm not the first to argue this, that deaths of despair that's a main reason why Trump was elected president.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Communities, and there have been studies on this. Communities that are super tight-knit, where there was the presence of God and people had meaning and purpose, they largely didn't vote for Trump. It was the communities in the middle of the country where people felt like they had no religion, they had no friends, they had no community, they had no greater purpose to be alive, and they were immensely atomized and lonely. Those were the people that, when they heard Trump's forgotten man message, they said, my God, yes, that resonates with me. I am the forgotten man.
Oh, and I think there's a version of it that I think that the key to unlocking the future is there is because he also had the coastal elite argument as well. So those two played against one another. I think the secret key message down the road is combining the forgotten men and women of America with the myriad of urban, coastal, forgotten men and women, of which there are so many, that are in a political culture that's dominated in one direction.
Right.
Putting those two together that really do have more in common, and the commonality is sort of the absence of God, despair,
Yes.
loneliness, and people, and it's a different kind of story here. Like, you're surrounded by people constantly. Being lonely in the city is almost more, almost even sadder for me, because you're actually surrounded by people.
It's alone together.
And
Well,
whereas,
and I've said this before, in the city, I believe that our peripheral vision is lacking. So and what I mean by that is that we have a destination that we mean to get to, and so we enter tunnel vision, and we kind of engage in this temperament that is very reserved. And it's like, don't talk to me, don't touch me, no Minnesota nice, no like, hey neighbor. It's like, get out of my way, I have a thing to do. And so what you wind up having is people that are alone together. I want to talk about this more, but we should do it next time, because Troy and I are going to see Bon Jovi at Madison Square Garden. And we'll catch you next time on the Frank Forum.